David's senses slowly return to life as he emerges from an unfathomable darkness, only to find himself thrust into a nightmarish reality. To his horror, he discovers that he has awakened during his funeral, a grotesque scene he had never anticipated. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The oppressive weight of his confinement within a coffin envelops him, and he feels a profound ache in his limbs, a harsh reminder of his physical reality. Exhaustion overwhelms him as he lies there, frozen and paralyzed, as if emerging from a deep, disorienting slumber. The familiar comforts of his home are replaced by the stark, chilling awareness of his grim predicament. As David battles the initial shock, a torrent of panicked thoughts rushes through his mind. His heart pounds with a blend of fear and disbelief as he questions his surroundings. Where am I? How did I end up here? Is this coffin truly my final resting place? His desperate inquiries are abruptly interrupted by the sound of voices seeping through the coffin's confines. Among them, his wife Clara engages in a conversation that cuts through David's stunned silence. Oh, I was starting to lose hope that this whole scheme would ever come to fruition. Clara's voice rings out with a chilling satisfaction, revealing her calculated triumph over her husband. Now that we've completed our plan, it's time to relish the fruits of our deception, she declares with a ruthless finality. Her accomplice, James, responds with an air of grim approval. Indeed, Clara, your resolve has been extraordinary. You nearly succeeded in ending him on multiple occasions. I truly thought he would perish in that car accident you meticulously orchestrated on the bridge. And do you believe anyone will suspect our involvement? James inquires with a tone of cautious concern. Not a chance in the world, Clara assures him, her voice laced with a cold confidence. Now be silent. The mourners are approaching. I will feign sorrow while you take on the role of his childhood friend, she directs, her demeanor poised for the next act of their dark drama. David, tormented by the betrayal and confusion, fights back tears as they stream down his face. The realization of Clara's betrayal strikes him with devastating clarity. How could she betray me so cruelly? I had given our marriage every opportunity to succeed, believing it was merely a rough patch. I suspected her infidelity on several occasions, yet only Edric, my closest friend, was privy to the harsh reality of our relationship. I must reach out to Edric. I need to escape this nightmarish situation and warn him. Clara, far from embodying the grief-stricken widow one might expect, performs her role with calculated finesse. She acts as though her sorrow is beyond consolation, while James, feigning deep friendship, envelops her in a sympathetic embrace. His false gestures of comfort serve only to heighten the facade of their elaborate deception. David, confined in the suffocating darkness of his coffin, listens to the murmur of voices drifting in and out, his mind racing to piece together the puzzle of recent unsettling events. As he recalls the series of seemingly unrelated mishaps, an unstable ladder, a car that nearly hit him in the dead of night, and a clumsy attempt at robbery, David's realization dawns with horrifying clarity. These incidents, which he had dismissed as mere strokes of bad luck, were meticulously orchestrated by Clara. His heart sinks as he comprehends the extent of her malevolence. The sound of Clara's voice breaks through David's troubled thoughts, laden with a venomous edge. You miserable wretch! If you ever wondered why I married him, know this: it was pure vengeance. His father tormented me, and when I discovered that David was the son of that monster, all I wanted was to exact my revenge, she spits out, her eyes blazing with bitter anger. James, seemingly caught off guard by this revelation, inquires with a mix of curiosity and surprise, "You were already acquainted with David's father?" Clara's impatience with the conversation is palpable as she snaps, "It was for both reasons, revenge and the money. Let's delay a bit longer before we move the body back to the hometown. We can make it seem more sympathetic, as his mother is buried there." Her face contorts with discomfort, revealing the depth of her disdain and unresolved hatred. Clara's rage consumes her, overshadowing any genuine grief she might have felt for David, the man who had treated her with kindness. As Clara and James plan their next steps, David, trapped in the coffin, is overwhelmed by the suffocating darkness. Desperation gives way to determination as he consciously focuses on finding a way out. With immense effort, he manages to twitch the little finger of his right hand and the thumb of his foot. This tiny movement sparks a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. Though it is hard to contemplate my confinement in this coffin, I must find a way to escape. Lord, grant me the strength and a path out of this dire situation. I refuse to accept this as my end, he silently prays. Following the funeral, Clara, accompanied by James, follows the hearse transporting David's body to his final resting place in his hometown. Before she creates a scene before Edric, David's loyal friend and confidant, she coldly explains that David's parents are also buried there. Edric, I trust you'll agree with my decision to lay David to rest next to his mother. It's the most fitting tribute, Clara declares, her feigned sorrow thinly veiled beneath a mask of calculated grief. Of course, Clara. I'm afraid I can't join you, Edric responded with a hint of suspicion in his voice. I need to attend to some urgent matters at the company. I'll reach out to you later, he said, clearly wary of Clara's insistent demeanor. Right now, my focus is on dealing with my grief. Once I've had time to process everything, I'll be in touch. For now, I need to take my leave, he added, trying to mask his burgeoning curiosity about the fortune that now lay in Clara's hands. Edric continued on his way, his mind racing with a multitude of thoughts. Clara and James followed the funeral procession as it meandered its way toward the quiet town that had once been David's home. The journey stretched on for nearly 3 hours, each minute weighed down with a profound sense of finality. As they arrived, the somber landscape of David's childhood enveloped them in its familiar yet melancholy embrace. Clara, having confirmed the tragic news of David's passing, felt an overwhelming apathy towards the funeral's remaining rituals. She had relinquished all obligations to her associates, her only remaining concern being to receive updates later about the successful completion of their grim mission. The hired hands approached Benjamin, the local gravedigger, and his team with a heavy-hearted air. They conveyed their instructions for the burial with a detachment that masked their discomfort, offering Benjamin a generous payment with the explanation that the deceased had no known family. Eager to extricate themselves from the situation and avoid any further entanglement, they left quickly. As Benjamin examined the coffin, a profound wave of sympathy washed over him. The desolation of the scene stirred a deep emotional resonance within him, his heart aching for the lonely souls sealed inside the coffin. As Benjamin and his team proceeded with their task, a flicker of hope ignited within David's confined space. He began to wiggle his toes, his movements growing more determined with each passing second. The small victories of flexing his entire foot became a beacon of hope, fueling his determination to regain control of his body. As the gravedigger's assistants meticulously prepared the grave and aligned the coffin for its descent, David's struggle intensified, driven by the newfound realization that he was still alive. The dismal weather outside mirrored David's sorrowful plight. Gray clouds loomed heavily overhead, casting a bleak and pallid light that seemed to amplify the melancholy of the occasion. It was a day that seemed to drain the very essence of hope and joy. Amid this desolate backdrop, Benjamin, a deeply spiritual man, murmured a heartfelt prayer for the solitary soul he was about to lay to rest, seeking to provide some semblance of solace to the departed. In a moment of unexpected reprieve, Benjamin's niece, Gwen, arrived on the scene. Her presence provided a much-needed distraction from the somber atmosphere. Teddy, Benjamin's loyal dog, greeted Gwen with exuberant barks, his joy contrasting sharply with the somber task at hand. Gwen approached with a warm and affectionate smile, her voice tinged with concern. "Uncle, I decided to come by today. You're never home anymore," she said, her words wrapped in genuine care and warmth. Benjamin, momentarily lifted from his duties, responded with a chuckle. "Ah, my dear, if only the deceased would take a break from departing this world, perhaps I'd find more time to rest," he joked, his attempt at humor bringing a light-hearted laugh from Gwen. "Don't say that," Uncle Gwen replied, her laughter blending with genuine concern. "It seems unusually quiet today. I didn't see many people around, so I thought I'd come by." "But what's that?" she asked, pointing with curiosity at the solitary coffin. "Why is there no one else here?" Benjamin sighed deeply, preparing to explain. "We had a rather unusual situation today. A striking woman with fiery red hair, along with a man presumably her partner, appeared briefly, accompanied by several men clad in black. After a brief and secretive exchange, they left payment for the service and disappeared like phantoms, claiming that the deceased had no known family." Gwen's eyes filled with compassion as she took in Benjamin's account. "How sorrowful, Uncle," she said softly, her voice laced with empathy. At that moment, Teddy, sensing the somber atmosphere, began to bark as if trying to offer comfort. Gwen, distracted by the emotional weight of the scene, noticed an unusual sound coming from within the coffin. Her curiosity piqued, and her apprehension growing, she moved closer to investigate. As Teddy's barking grew more insistent, Gwen's concern intensified. "Uncle, did you hear that? Something is moving in there," she cried out, her voice trembling with alarm. "Are you certain about that?" Benjamin asked, his skepticism evident as he leaned in to listen more closely. "Listen for yourself," Gwen urged, her focus unwavering on the strange noises emanating from the coffin. Inside, David, whom everyone had presumed dead, felt the sudden awareness of his plight and redoubled his efforts, pounding with increasing force and calling out weakly for help. Without hesitation, Benjamin and his team sprang into action, prying open the coffin with a sense of urgency. To their utter astonishment, they discovered David alive, his movements slow and his eyes wide with fear. Gwen rushed to the coffin's edge, her heart aching as she witnessed the man's desperate pleas for aid. The gravity of the situation left everyone in stunned disbelief. Gwen, her voice steady and soothing, addressed the terrified man with a calming tone. "Stay calm, we're going to help you." Breathed deeply and tried to relax her heart went out to the stranger, whose attempts to speak, though weak, conveyed his urgent plea. She leaned in closer to hear him better. With great effort, David whispered, "Please don't tell her. If she finds out, she'll realize she tried to bury me alive. My throat is burning. Later I'll seek justice. Just bury my coffin as if I were still inside." The profound revelation left everyone grappling with the enormity of what had just transpired, their initial shock giving way to a whirlwind of emotions as they processed the life-altering discovery. Gwen looked at her uncle with a mixture of hope and apprehension, silently seeking his approval. Understanding the gravity of the situation and feeling an obligation to act, Benjamin gave a firm nod, signaling his willingness to help. He requested that the attendants step aside, assuring them that he would manage the rest of the task. Once they had left, Benjamin swiftly orchestrated the careful removal of David from the coffin, taking every precaution to ensure his secret remained undisclosed. Meanwhile, he dispatched an urgent message to Edric, David's steadfast friend, detailing the shocking turn of events. Edric, overwhelmed by the startling news, raced to the scene with a sense of urgency. Upon arriving, he was struck by the sight of David's frail and weakened condition. The sight was both horrifying and deeply relieving. David was indeed alive. Edric listened intently as David recounted the harrowing ordeal, gradually understanding the extent of the sinister plot orchestrated by Clara. Determined to expose Clara's vile scheme, Edric, now resolute and driven by a sense of justice, began gathering crucial evidence with David's assistance. He reached out to law enforcement, presenting the damning evidence that would lead to Clara and James being apprehended and charged with their serious crimes. The weight of their nefarious actions became evident as they were held accountable for their grave misdeeds. David, having survived a nightmarish ordeal that seemed straight out of a horror story, made a solemn vow to seek retribution for the injustices inflicted upon him. With a newfound resolve, he set out to rebuild his life, embodying the resilience and determination that had always defined him. His journey of recovery and justice became a powerful testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit. The narrative concludes with David, once presumed dead but now triumphantly reclaiming his life, standing firmly against those who had wronged him. His story evolves into a profound testament to perseverance and the relentless pursuit of justice, offering hope and inspiration to all who hear it. After weeks of silence and detachment, Clara returned home with a grim resolve. Her nights had been haunted by David's ghostly presence, his spectral form appearing in her dreams, demanding that she leave his son in peace. Driven by a relentless nightmare and a dark obsession, Clara had resolved to rid herself of David once and for all. The plan she concocted was sinister and cold-hearted to put an end to her torment by ensuring David would never again disrupt her nights. In her twisted logic, she would achieve peace by laying him to rest permanently. Determined to mask her true intentions, Clara adopted a facade of normalcy. When she next encountered David, she greeted him with an outwardly warm embrace, concealing the dark intentions festering beneath her surface. With feigned cheerfulness, she suggested they order a pizza and select a bottle of wine, creating an illusion of reconciliation and normalcy. David, relieved and hopeful, believed that things were finally returning to a state of normalcy. Little did he know, Clara's intentions were far from the happy reunion he envisioned. Clara dressed provocatively and took her place on the couch, adopting an air of casual sophistication. She offered to pour the wine, a gesture that David, despite feeling a slight unease, interpreted as an attempt to make their evening pleasant. Trusting her, he accepted her suggestion to freshen up with a shower, believing her odd behavior was simply an effort to reconnect. As David stepped out of the shower, Clara poured the wine with calculated precision, adding a carefully measured amount to his glass. "I hope this is just right," she remarked casually, taking a sip from her glass to conceal the poison she had spiked David's drink with. When David reappeared, clean and invigorated, Clara gestured towards the wine she had prepared for him. Before he could take a sip, she leaned in and gave him a lingering kiss, her touch cold and detached. The kiss was a final, bitter act of deceit, one she knew would be her last moment of false intimacy with him. As David, unsuspecting and trusting, reached for his glass, Clara's diabolical plan was set into motion, sealing his fate with every sip he took. After a successful job, Clara, her voice laced with false excitement, tried to spark a conversation. "It was incredible," she said, her eyes gleaming with feigned enthusiasm. "And there were only women there." She aimed to distract David and make him believe in the fabricated story she had crafted. David, unsuspecting and trusting, drank deeply from his glass. Clara, ensuring the poison's effects were concealed, promptly poured him another helping of wine. Just as David began to feel the effects, the doorbell rang. The pizza had arrived. Clara offered to fetch it, but David insisted on getting it himself. As he returned with the pizza, he was already beginning to feel drowsy. He placed the pizza on the table and sank onto the couch, resting his head on Clara's lap. Clara, masking her sinister satisfaction, thought to herself, "I hope you sleep forever, my love. Let's eat the pizza before the cheese hardens." She continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I thought you missed spending time with me." David, feeling increasingly dizzy and numb, commented, "I haven't had a drink in a while. I feel a bit off." As the effects of the poison took hold, he mumbled, "Let me stay here on your lap for a little while before succumbing to a deep, eternal slumber." From that moment on, David never woke again. In a stark hospital room, David's consciousness began to stir once more. He recalled that fateful evening with Clara, realizing it had been his last moments with her. The weight of the situation was overwhelming, and the only sounds he could recall were those from his wake. Suddenly, Edric burst into the room, his face a mask of shock and horror. "My God, what did they do to you?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine concern and despair as he grappled with the horrifying realization that David might have been buried alive. David, now calm and composed, prepared to confide in his friend. "It's all right now," he said, attempting to offer reassurance. "How's the company?" he inquired, eager to address the future. Edric, his voice trembling with the chaos of recent events, replied, "As far as everyone knows, you're dead. I spoke with the lawyer." David, with a steady voice, said, "I want you to take over the company for me. I trust you completely. Remember the power of attorney I gave you in case something happened to me." Edric nodded, still grappling with the gravity of the situation. "Yes, but what about Sarah?" he asked, his concern evident. David, resolute and unyielding, responded, "She will get what she deserves. Take that power of attorney and assume my position. I'll assist you from here for now. You can tell them there are formalities to handle. Sarah knows nothing about business. In my will, I've left the company to you in case of my demise. My brother lives in Europe and has never shown any interest in my business. I don't even have his contact information, and my mother is living with him there." David's voice, though weakened, was filled with a determined clarity. As Edric prepared to take over David's responsibilities, he was reassured by David's trust and the clarity of his final wishes. After a successful job, Clara, her voice laced with false excitement, tried to spark a conversation. "It was incredible," she said, her eyes gleaming with feigned enthusiasm. "And there were only women there." She aimed to distract David and make him believe in the fabricated story she had crafted. David, unsuspecting and trusting, drank deeply from his glass. Clara, ensuring the poison's effects were concealed, promptly poured him another helping of wine. Just as David began to feel the effects, the doorbell rang. The pizza had arrived. Clara offered to fetch it, but David insisted on getting it himself. As he returned with the pizza, he was already beginning to feel drowsy. He placed the pizza on the table and sank onto the couch, resting his head on Clara's lap. Clara, masking her sinister satisfaction, thought to herself, "I hope you sleep forever, my love. Let's eat the pizza before the cheese hardens." She continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I thought you missed spending time with me." David, feeling increasingly dizzy and numb, commented, "I haven't had a drink in a while. I feel a bit off as the effects of the poison took hold." He mumbled, "Let me stay here on your lap for a little while before succumbing to a deep, eternal slumber." From that moment on, David never woke again. In a stark hospital room, David's consciousness began to stir once more. He recalled that fateful evening with Clara, realizing it had been his last moments with her. The weight of the situation was overwhelming, and the only sounds he could recall were those from his wake. Suddenly, Edric burst into the room, his face a mask of shock and horror. "My God, what did they do to you?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine concern and despair as he grappled with the horrifying realization that David might have been buried alive. David, now calm and composed, prepared to confide in his friend. "It's all right now," he said, attempting to offer reassurance. "How's the company?" he inquired, eager to address the future. Edric, his voice trembling with the chaos of recent events, replied, "As far as everyone knows, you're dead. I spoke with the lawyer." David, with a steady voice, said, "I want you to take over the company for me. I trust you completely. Remember the power of attorney I gave you in case something happened to me." Edric nodded, still grappling with the gravity of the situation. "Yes, but what about Sarah?" he asked, his concern evident. David, resolute and unyielding, responded, "She will get what she deserves. Take that power of attorney and assume my position. I'll assist you from here for now. You can tell them there are formalities to handle. Sarah knows nothing about business. in my will. I've left the company to you in case of my demise. My brother lives in Europe and has never shown any interest in my business. I don't even have his contact information, and my mother is living with him there." David's voice, though weakened, was filled with a determined clarity. As Edric prepared to take over David's responsibilities, he was reassured by David's trust and the clarity of his final wishes. To shift the conversation, Edric broached the subject of their next steps. He had connections with some police officers who were friends of his father, a cop, who had passed away, Edric explained, his mind racing with possibilities. "If I share this story with them, especially given the friendship I have with David, I'm confident they'll lend us their support." He envisioned Clara's arrest and the ensuing legal consequences with a sense of grim satisfaction. Gwen chimed in, her voice steady with resolve. I think the old strategy of calling her bluff and pretending we know everything might have intimidated her. We could pursue legal action and use cameras and recorders to document her confession. Whatever happens, we need to be prepared." Her practical approach suggested a familiarity with the legal system. David, trying to lighten the mood despite the gravity of the situation, laughed. "Sounds like you've got some experience in this." Gwen nodded, her eyes focused on David as he continued. "Well, Clara confided in me about some things, and aside from that man who was with her, I think I'm the only one who knows. I overheard her talking near the coffin," he said, his voice tinged with frustration and resolve. "That could be our advantage." Curious, Edric asked, "What kind of information are we talking about?" Gwen leaned in, equally attentive. David took a deep breath, recalling the details. "About 10 years ago, Clara was molested by an older man. She told me this because she had a strong aversion to older men, especially those who resembled him. Her fear and the nightmares she experienced after her father's death, she even refused to attend his funeral, showed the depth of her trauma." Gwen thought for a moment. "What if I called her and confronted her with this information, using everything we know? But where could we arrange to meet her?" David offered a solution. "I can think of a place, my boss's house." He then addressed Edric's inquiry. "Hey, isn't your mom supposed to be coming back from Europe?" David shook his head. "No, she decided to stay there. She was tired of being alone, and since she rarely saw my brother, she wanted to spend more time with him." Gwen asked, "And where's your mother's house?" "It's about 100 kilometers from here," David replied. The group spent a considerable amount of time discussing and finalizing their plan, ensuring every detail was accounted for. When the meeting concluded, Edric had to leave but promised to return with Gwen and a police friend to wrap up this troubling affair. Gwen wasted no time, shifting the focus to David's recovery. "Come on, David, I'll show you to your room," she said gently, guiding him with a comforting tone. "Thank you," David replied, his gratitude palpable. Gwen led him to a simple but tidy room. The bed was modest yet neatly made, and there was a small desk near a closet to the left. The room, though unadorned, offered a sense of quiet and order, an essential refuge as David prepared to face the challenges ahead. As we reach the end of this intense and gripping story, we reflect on the complex journey of David, Clara, and their circle. From deceit and danger to unexpected revelations and justice, this tale has unfolded with twists that challenge our perceptions and test our resilience. So what have you learned from this narrative? How have the characters' experiences and the unfolding events impacted your perspective? We invite you to share in the comments below one key lesson or insight you've gained from this story and how you plan to apply it in your own life. Your thoughts and reflections are important to us, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you enjoyed this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, please leave your comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more engaging stories and updates. Thank you for watching.